Welcome in, Hockey Talk Show, live with you here on this Friday, June 14th. Thanks so much for joining us on the program. We have a jam-packed show for you guys today. It is unbelievable the amount of hockey that we're going to talk in a very, very small time frame. We got tons to talk about. Jordan Eberle resigns with the New York Islanders. We had a trade in the National Hockey League today, a pretty significant one too, and a minor one. We had two trades. Erik Karlsson rumors are running rampant. What will happen to him? We'll go over that. There's a few other NHL trade rumors and free agency rumors. And of course, we're covering everything on the Stanley Cup final, things that you guys saw on the ice and things that you guys didn't see on the ice, including some stuff with some explicit language in it to boot. It is all right here on this episode of the Hockey Talk Show. All right, thanks for being with us here. If you're in the Facebook or YouTube chats, make sure you guys hit the thumbs up on this video right away. Anytime you're joining us, thumbs up on the video as soon as possible. And if you're on the podcast, rate and review on Apple Podcast. Throw those thumbs up. Throw the, actually, it's 5 stars on the podcast. I am so sorry. 5 stars on the podcast. Don't put a thumbs up on the podcast. You will be in the wrong spot. You will for sure be in the wrong spot. 5 stars on the podcast. Appreciate the support as always. Thank you guys so much for sharing this on your social media, Twitter and Facebook. Dave's in the house. Oh, throw me some comments too on Facebook and YouTube. Dave is in the house, so I know you guys are here. Never thought having the Blues could feel so good. Blues fans are excited. Blues fans are super excited, and I'm super excited for the Blues fans. I really am. I do like seeing, franchises, teams, fan bases win after not winning for so long. And that was a pretty 2-year streak for the St. Louis Blues. That's a pretty damn long streak. We kind of thought it was going to be San Jose's year this year, right, to end their sort of streak, but not so much. It's the St. Louis Blues. Similarly to how Washington won last year, the Stanley Cup. It's interesting that we've kind of had these the last couple of years of like all these franchises that were picked to win, expecting to win, and never won, and then finally get there. It's kind of the same story last year that it was this year, with the Blues and the Caps. Although we really kind of thought it was going to be San Jose fulfilling that prophecy, but it's the St. Louis Blues, and congratulations to you guys. This was a huge, huge story in the National Hockey League. And if you're here for Jordan Eberle and the Islanders, we're going to get to it. If you're here for the trade between the Caps and the Philadelphia Flyers, we're going to get to it. We're going to talk Minnesota Wild here. We're going to talk about the San Jose Sharks. We're going to talk about the draft, free agency. We have a lot to talk about. But let's start with the St. Louis Blues and how big of a story this is, not only for the Blues, but for the National Hockey League. I mean, it's massive. Guys, worst to first. And I know we've been talking about it, but doesn't it feel so different now that it's actually complete? You know what I mean? Like, we were talking about, wow, how crazy would this be? And this is such a story. But now that we're here, now that the parade is being planned, now that, St. Louis is, king of the hill, it's even more insane to think about. It really is even more insane to think about what a huge, huge story this is for the St. Louis Blues. We got some video and some audio and some cool stuff to share with you. But I think I'm going to start here with the ratings just to kind of prove my point and bring it home to how big this was. Matt, welcome in on the YouTube chat. Thumbs up, guys, on the videos, Facebook and YouTube right now. Share this as well on your Twitter, on your Facebook. Let everybody know we're talking live hockey here on the Hockey Talk Show. Going to get to some questions. If I don't get to stuff right away, I'm going to real great question. Eberle talking about, Anders Lee and what that means. Eberle said some really interesting stuff. I'm going to break it all down. We're going to get to it. But let's start with the St. Louis Blues, and let's start with just how huge this was for not only St. Louis, but the National Hockey League. Let's start with St. Louis. Game 7 in St. Louis finished with a 41.8 rating. That is insane. Let me just tell you guys that like a 1.2 in St. Louis is, if a show gets like a 1.2 or a 4.3 or a 6.7, that's a big win. That is a big win. The Stanley Cup Finals, Game 7 in St. Louis, got a 41.8 rating. That's insanity. Insanity. That's Linsanity. That's Jeremy Linsanity. That's how insane that is. I mean, it really, really is. Just to put into perspective, because everybody knows the National Football League and football is the biggest sport in the world. Do you know what the Super Bowl got in St. Louis for Rams Patriots? 39.8. The Stanley Cup Finals, Game 7, beat the Super Bowl ratings in St. Louis. Amazing. Now, a lot of people are going to be like, well, there was the boycott and this and that. Hey, cool. That's fine with me. Whatever you got to do to justify it. But it's still a massive thing for the National Hockey League that the NHL Game 7 beat the Super Bowl in the ratings. Just to go on and continue how crazy this is. The Game 7 ratings got a 60 share. So what share means is how many people are watching in any given sample size. So the market of St. Louis, a 60 share means that 6 out of every 10 homes were tuned in to the Stanley Cup Final Game 7. I mean, it just doesn't get any bigger than this. And if you're thinking, well, obviously it's St. Louis and all this stuff, Game 7, St. Louis Blues, Boston Bruins, is the most watched hockey game in the history of the National Hockey League. The most watched. 8.914 million viewers across NBC, NBCSports.com, and the NBC Sports app. It is the most watched game on record. Doesn't go back too far. The NHL was only keeping track of their ratings since 1994. But it beat the New York Rangers Stanley Cup, which is kind of amazing because I really thought that that was the absolute biggest for a really long time. Obviously, New York, number one market. Vancouver, Canada's involved, number one market in the States. This beat that one. This is one of the most successful Stanley Cup playoffs for the National Hockey League in quite some time. And if you're a fan of the game, this is such a great sign for us moving forward. It shows real growth in the game. They're actually getting their results. Gary Bettman and the whole crew have done a phenomenal job. NBC has done a great job in putting these games on. Everything is going really well for the National Hockey League. All things are trending upward, and that's a huge, huge accomplishment. Really good for the game. Really good for everybody. John in Facebook, Adam, Dave, welcome in. Matt, Real, how you guys doing? Let's talk about St. Louis. I did love this thing. Let's start off with a visual here. And I'm not sure who created this, but somebody went ahead and re-edited the Stanley Cup Finals to look like NHL 94. This is amazing. Put in the sound effects and everything. Take a look at this. Look at this. Pietrangelo. Oh. Listen to the boos and the old stupid horn and everything. They got the blue star around them. The ice is tinted that light sky blue. I mean, how great. I can't even imagine the amount of work it took to do this. If you're listening on the podcast, you got to go and see the video on Facebook and YouTube. It's incredible. It is legitimately incredible. And they did all the highlights for Game 7 here. Stanley Cup Finals in NHL 94 style. I just got the biggest kick out of that. I thought you guys would enjoy seeing that. That was really, really cool for me. Let's keep it on the visuals here. This was a great Stanley Cup Final, obviously very successful for the National Hockey League, and it was filled with a lot of cursing, an awful lot of cursing. Here's Jordan Binnington with the first curse on ESPN speaking to Barry Melrose and Steve Levy.
I retain 4th the depth chart to start the season. Tell me what this journey has been like for you. And it's a short journey. You're an NHL rookie.
And everyone, you just got to believe in yourself and just keep working hard and just keep believing. And, you know, I work pretty hard. And, you know, obviously the group was incredible and we meshed well and everyone was playing hard for each other. So I'm really happy with where I'm at right now.
You got to love that. Man, F everyone. I worked really hard. Oh, my God. Jordan Binnington wasn't the only one throwing the F-bomb around. Ryan O'Reilly did it, and this wasn't bleeped out. So just forewarning to you younger viewers out there, do not curse.
You know, with the way Binner performed there, you know, he was unbelievable. That first period, he made unbelievable saves. It gives us a chance. We got a little mojo going. You know, once we got that lead, we knew we were going to fucking get it. You know? Sorry, I'm so amped up. I'm so sorry.
And you are. You're all amped up when it comes to winning the Stanley Cup. You're not in the right frame of mind. You can't, remember not to curse on Sportsnet, which is Canada's huge network. So there was a couple of curse words in there thrown in by everybody. A couple of other notable things from the Stanley Cup final. Ryan O'Reilly played through cracked ribs in the first round. So if you're one of the people that are like, why didn't Jordan Binnington win the Conn Smythe? Why was it Ryan O'Reilly? The guy was a workhorse. I put this out on the Hockey Talk Show Facebook page because on a previous episode, I was talking about how Jordan Binnington is Conn Smythe winner, no doubt about it, head and shoulders above everybody else. But as soon as Ryan O'Reilly scored that goal in Game 7 and he added an assist, I'm like, there's no way this guy's not going to get it now. And yeah, Jordan Binnington had a hell of a Game 7, and he was a huge part in winning in the St. Louis Blues, getting their first ever Stanley Cup. But Binnington went from head and shoulders above everybody else to it really being kind of dead even. And when you look at the breakdown on why they went with Ryan O'Reilly and you look at broken ribs and all this kind of stuff, he was just a workhorse for them, man. He was just a workhorse. Like I said, Binnington was the easy story because he came in and they went worst to first, and you could just go, oh, well, this guy arrived, and they turned their whole thing around. But really, it started with Ryan O'Reilly because, like I said before, he came in and he defined what St. Louis Blues hockey is. Everybody goes, oh, we got to play our game. We got to play St. Louis Blues hockey. We got to play Vancouver Canucks hockey. Well, what does that mean? Well, for the St. Louis Blues, it means what Ryan O'Reilly does on the ice. He hits hard, deep forecheck, great presence in front of the net. He had that tip goal in Game 7 there. He had a ton of game winners. I mean, essentially, because Boston scored one goal, Ryan O'Reilly's goal wasn't a game winner, but at that point at 4-0, I mean, it kind of was, which was another reason why I think he was given the Conn Smythe Trophy. And that was basically the spirit behind my tweet, which was, this guy's got another game winner. He is leading the charge yet again. He deserves to be in the Conn Smythe conversation, and he won, and rightfully so. Joan, so were you surprised that the Blues won the Stanley Cup? I wasn't. I blue-leaved. Blue-leaved. Here's a message to 31 other teams fans right now. You have to put up with some of the craziness that's going to come from the St. Louis Blues. And you know what? Joan, you and the rest of your fan base deserve to say all kinds of crazy stuff. You guys are champions. You're on top of the hill. Don't let anybody take that away from you. And I love wordplay jokes, and blue-eaved is phenomenal. A+ to you, my friend. Good job all around. To take a funny question and answer it seriously, though, yeah, I think everybody was surprised. Look, this was Tampa Bay's cup to lose. And let's just look back at how great this playoffs was, because all the first seed teams got ousted in grand fashion. We had the sweep in the Eastern Conference with the Islanders sweeping Pittsburgh, then getting swept by Carolina, then them getting swept. Yeah, I mean, it was just an incredible playoffs all around. Yes, a little controversial. Yes, not the best for the referees, but it was exciting. The ratings were phenomenal, not just in Game 7, but all the way throughout. And honestly, I mean, I don't know what else you can ask for out of a out of a playoff. It was really, really good. Far better than the NBA playoffs, if you ask me. Really, really exciting stuff from the National Hockey League. I mean, it's a great time to be a National Hockey League fan right now. It just really is. It's phenomenal. And on the referee topic here quickly, because again, we love to dump on the referees as much as possible. That's what all the non-smart hockey talking heads do. We don't do that here on the Hockey Talk Show. Let's give credit where credit is due. They had a phenomenal Game 7. The refs had a great Game 7. There was one penalty called throughout the whole game. That was, I think it was Ryan O'Reilly who put the puck over the boards for a delay of game penalty. For the rest of the time, they put the whistles in their pocket. And not only credit to the referees, but also credit to St. Louis and Boston because they played a really good, clean game. You know, there wasn't a ton of dirty stuff on the ice, even though Brad Marchand was involved in the game. And I want to say this too, wrapping up with Stanley Cup finals here, and we'll get into the trades and the jerseys. We got some jerseys to look at, some new jerseys coming for 2019-2020. I don't get, like, Brad Marchand. I've talked about Brad Marchand. I think he's a phenomenal player. I think the National Hockey League hasn't disciplined him enough in the past. I think they let him get away with far too much. He's a really skilled player, though. He's the kind of player everybody wants on their team and everybody hates when he's not. I just don't get the abuse. I don't understand. There was a lot of memes of him crying and all that stuff. You're never going to get that from me. I don't understand making fun of somebody for being passionate about something. It's never been my thing. Like, the guy lost the Stanley Cup Finals. I lost in high school. 2 years in a row, my high school went to the city championships, and we lost in the finals 2 years in a row in overtime once. That was the high school New York City Class C championship, and I was devastated. I can't even imagine. That's a millionfold being a Stanley Cup Finals loss. I'm not going to make fun of the guy for that. You know, it's an emotional thing. These guys play their hearts out, and I never got the point of abusing them. But it's the internet, so, you know, it is what it is. Joan, at least Marchand didn't lick anyone this round. Listen, amen for the little things. Am I right? That's true. I wasn't appreciative of any of the Marchand memes, although I did see one where he was crying and they superimposed him licking whoever it was he was licking last year. So it was like he was licking his own tears. It was weird, but I did appreciate that. That probably took a little bit of work to do. So good for whoever that was. Marchand said the Blues stole their dreams. Yeah, I didn't get that part of it either because they already won a Stanley Cup, you know, so they've already achieved their dreams. But I get it. It's an emotional thing. You lose a cup, you go all this way and come up shorthanded. Game 7, you know, what do you expect? Binnington had the quote of the finals for me, though, and it wasn't F everybody. He literally said after Game 7 in the locker room, and Joel Edmondson quoted him on Twitter. If you follow Joel Edmondson, J Edmondson 3 on Twitter, he wrote, this is what Jordan Binnington said: "I wasn't spending $6,000 on tickets and not winning." That to me was quote of the series. I wasn't spending $6,000 on tickets and not winning. He legit spent $6,000 on tickets to Game 7 in the Stanley Cup Finals. Something they don't tell you about. They don't pay players in the finals, in the playoffs actually altogether. And, you know, you'll get maybe 2 tickets, but to the Stanley Cup Finals, you got to buy your tickets. And he spent $6,000 on tickets. That's just crazy. We talked about Ryan O'Reilly playing through cracked ribs. How about Zdeno Chara? We all know he broke his jaw. He broke his jaw in 4,000 places. All right, legitimately, it was like, I don't know, 3 or something like that, but it was just crazy. I mean, the guy is a workhorse. Chara's got 1 year left on his deal. I thought that if he won the Cup this year, he might retire. He didn't win. I guess it's still a possibility, but he looked fairly okay. He's not the Zdeno Chara he was 5 years ago, obviously, but I think he looked okay. I think he might come back and finish out his year, to answer your question there, John, on Facebook. I think I could see Chara staying out there. And you know what? It's the right thing to do. Let him play out that last year. 1 more year, you know, until it gets turned over to Torrey Krug. and Charlie McAvoy, who I really think, no slight against Krug, but I really think that it's Charlie McAvoy who's going to be sort of the go-to guy on the Boston defense moving forward. Last thought on Binnington on Sportsnet, Doug Armstrong was quoted as saying he is going to earn Doug Armstrong, the general manager for the St. Louis Blues, on Jordan Binnington says, and I quote, he is going to earn a big pay raise this summer. We're looking forward to paying him. Very rarely do you hear a general manager say that. That is uncharacteristic of a general manager to say such a thing. But you get awfully giddy and gleeful when you just won Lord Stanley's Cup, especially when you were the first one to do that in your city for your franchise. So a little bit of a weak moment there from Doug Armstrong, but it's a romantic thing to do. You know, it's a really nice thing to do. I think that Jordan Binnington is amazing, but I do, I don't want to rain on anybody's parade here, but I am awfully weary of paying goaltenders a lot of money based off of such a small sample size. That could be super risky. Does he deserve a raise? Yes. Did he play better than a Carey Price and a King Henrik? Yep. Does he deserve $8, $9, $10 million? That's scary. That's really, really scary, man. Statistically, yeah. He does this for 2 or 3 years? Yeah. But you get into this odd position where if you're the player, just like we saw with William Karlsson last year in the Vegas Golden Knights, do you sign a bridge deal 1-2 years and bet on yourself to really cash in down the line? Or do you sit there and go, hey, I want an 8-year, blah, blah. I'll take a little less for an 8-year deal, all this and that. What do you do? And if you're St. Louis, I know what Doug Armstrong said, but honestly, you're still working off of a very, very small sample size. Now, do I think that Jordan Binnington is going to go in the other direction and fall apart? I don't. But I'm also not here to be like, this guy is going to be the guy for the next 10 years. It is so hard to tell with goaltenders. There's so much involved psychologically, everything. It's just physically, mentally. There's a lot involved there. And as we've seen, the league is really leaning towards splitting time between the starter and the backup to a 60-40 scenario, 50-50 scenario. It's no longer 80-20, 85-15 percentage of games. You'd rarely see the 60-game player and the 15-20-game backup. That is sort of exiting the game. Then again, who else does St. Louis have to pay when it comes to in net? But, I mean, you look at there's a lot of goaltenders, Hamburglar, right? All these guys that get super hot in the playoffs, take their teams on these massive runs, and then they're never able to duplicate that. So if I got to throw some caution in here, I wouldn't be so quick to pay Jordan Binnington. I don't have the answers. This is not one of the scenarios where I'm like, this is what you should do. This is a scenario where it's very, very tricky for both sides. Like I said, if you're Binnington and you want to be that $8 million goaltender and you believe you are, you sign a 1-year deal and replicate your stats for another season, and you will make more than if you sign a 6-7 year deal this year in the offseason. That's a fact. So what do you do? And what do you do if you're St. Louis? Because if you're St. Louis, okay, I don't want to get locked into a long-term deal if this guy is just a flash in the pan. But on the other hand, if you go with a safer, shorter-term deal, you may have to pay up long-term after that is done. So it'll be really interesting to see what the St. Louis Blues, but judging by what Doug Armstrong said, I'm sure they'll come to some sort of an agreement, maybe 5-year deal, $6-7 million, sort of around that area. We'll have to wait and see. But there's goaltending has been super funky in the league lately. Really, really funky. See what happens. He may have made some big saves in Game 7, but he's no Fleury or Quick of the old. His save percentage wasn't that great. What did he give up? 4 goals that one game, too? He's had his ups and downs. For sure, he has had his ups and downs. So we'll wait and see what happens with Jordan Binnington here. The RFAs, it's going to get just super interesting. Super, super interesting. Let's talk about our trade from today here. Pretty significant move, moving these two guys around. I'm surprised in one sense because it's not a gargantuan deal, but it is pretty significant. Radko Gudas goes from the Philadelphia Flyers to the Washington Capitals, and Matti Niskanen goes back the other way. Couple of quick thoughts here. We are now living in a world where Tom Wilson and Radko Gudas play on the same team. You talk about a team that'll come in and kick the crap out of you. Jesus, the Washington Capitals just beefed themselves up in a major, major way. Not that Niskanen's a lightweight. He can hit himself. He's better offensively than Radko Gudas is. I actually like this trade a little bit better for the Flyers because I think Radko Gudas, although he's great at what he does, he has to play on the edge a lot of times. And as we've seen with him in the past, that can cost a team. That can really cost a team. So I like this deal. I like it a little bit more for the Philadelphia Flyers. And I think this signals between this and the Kevin Hayes trade, Chuck Fletcher is looking to make some moves, and he is looking to make the Philadelphia Flyers a significant team this season. Long-term building plans, letting Hart develop. I don't think it's in the cards for the Philadelphia Flyers. They want Hart to put up now, and they want to win now. So I found that to be a pretty interesting scenario here in the Niskanen-Radko Gudas trade. Let's see here. Philadelphia is also retaining 30% of Gudas' contract, so a little bit of savings there for the Washington Capitals, as they can't be none too pleased with what happened with them in this playoff series. The other team that I find open for business, and basically because the general manager came out and said that today, is the Minnesota Wild. And like we've been talking about on the last couple episodes of the Hockey Talk Show, we know the Minnesota Wild are going to be active, just like the Flyers. They have a new general manager. In fact, the new Flyers general manager was the old Minnesota Wild general manager. So it'll be pretty interesting, too, with these two teams saying, hey, we're open for business, seeing if they can't make a deal together. I wonder if Chuck Fletcher reaches back to the Minnesota Wild and tries to pick off some of his favorites. As Paul Fenton said in a statement today, we're considering any and all trades on our team. So that'll be pretty interesting. Also, this has been a rumor that has been confirmed up and down. The Flyers have put up their first-round draft pick. Chuck Fletcher's gone out and said, hey, if you want my first-round draft pick, I am willing to deal it. Let's make a deal. It seems to me in this draft, you have obviously the first two, right? You got Hughes and the other guy, KK, as I'm going to start calling him. And then you have some good guys in the 3 to 6 range. And then you have a little bit of a drop off there. And I saw something from one general manager today that basically said, after that like 6th, 7th pick, a guy that you can get in the 8th pick, some other team might think that they can get him in the 15th pick, So you might actually see a lot of movement here where teams will be like, we like this guy, but we think if we move back and grab a 3rd or 4th round pick, we could probably get him a little bit higher up. So you're going to see a lot of interchanging sort of play here, which I think will lead to a super interesting and very trade-filled NHL draft this coming offseason. Let's talk about the NHL draft and when the hell that is. Here's some key NHL dates for you. The buyout period in the National Hockey League starts tomorrow. So you can start making your first buyouts as early as tomorrow. The awards are in Vegas on June 19th. The general managers get together for their first meeting at the draft June 20th. The draft is June 21st and 22nd. The GM meetings are pretty significant because you could probably see a lot of trade activity during that time. And they're also going to be talking about rules, decisions, and everything else for the next year. June 21st and 22nd, NHL Draft. I think we're going to do a live watch on that one. We'll watch the draft together. We'll have it up, and we can have live reaction to it here. Definitely do that on day 2. It's always kind of fun to do that on day 2, Saturday morning. Draft is on Friday night, 7 or 8 o'clock. I forget which one. The schedule gets released for next season on June 25th, and this one's really important. Well, these two are important. June 23rd, the UFA interview process begins, and June 26th, the RFA interview process begins. So other teams could start talking to other players and just kind of gauge where they want to be at and see if there's any interest there. So if you're an Islander fan and you're desperate to find out about Anders Lee, June 23rd is going to be awfully telling to see where he is with his future. Speaking of the Islanders inking up Jordan Eberle today to a 5-year deal. I think the AAV was around $5.5 million. Solid move from them. It wasn't the best year for Jordan Eberle, but as he said in his press avail earlier today, it took him a little while to get used to Barry Trotz's style of defense first. You know, this is a winger who likes to score. He's not big. Defense has never been Jordan Eberle's thing. But I think as we saw all Islander fans who really take a look at it, you know, his end-of-the-year stats stunk, but he played really well. And once they got him together with Barzal and that line sort of came together, we really saw some of the potential with Jordan Eberle. Again, I will stick to my creed. It doesn't make sense for any player to sign in June unless you think this is the best offer you can possibly get. Or you have a personal matter which weighs into it. And in this particular case, Jordan Eberle just loves playing here, loves the island, loves where the franchise is going. Obviously, he's a smart guy. He knows Barzal is going to be with the team for years to come, and he wants to be on the other side of all of those points. And he decides to stay. He thinks, I can't get a better deal elsewhere. And, you know, maybe he could have squeaked out a couple of extra $100,000. But to Jordan Eberle, as he said again earlier, he's 29 and he wants to win. You know, now's the time to win. Real's question. Did you see Eberle say Lee is going down his own path to UFA? Does Ebbs signing mean Lee is gone? You know, I was thinking about that, Real, and it is a really, really good question. Because on the one hand, you can make the argument of him signing is a sign of this locker room is super good and people are going to want to stay. And Lee might want to stay now that he knows that Eberle is going to be there for the long haul. And you can also think of it as Lou Lamoriello going, well, talks between us and Anders Lee are not going well. Let me make sure I get, you know, Jordan Eberle under contract. Maybe that's the thinking. I don't really think one has to do with the other ultimately. I think this is definitely a sign that the locker room is great, that the future for the team is here. You know, Eberle said all the right things today in his media avail. He talked about, you know, the youth of the team and Barzal and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, again, he said all the right things. But I don't know if it really is going to make a difference. Again, it's funny because he echoed sort of the same thing as what people were saying about Tavares last year, which is he's earned the right to be a free agent and he's going to go down, you know, his own path. So I don't know. I can't really definitively say it really makes a difference. But I think it's good for the Islander fans. You got a good piece in here. He wants to stay. This is a good story to tell. The Sean Averys and other uneducated a-holes around the hockey world are going to be like, nobody wants to play here. Arena, all the same old garbage. Well, let's tell the legit story. Here's a guy who's 29, wants to win, is a skilled offensive player, and he loves playing on the island. You won't hear anybody else tell that story because it's not the popular story to tell when it comes to the Islanders, but the truth is the truth. And that's the truth in this particular statement here. Let's see. Dustin, someone made a comment that the Stars' 18th pick could swap picks for the 28th and 37th pick and send the 111th-ish pick the other way. I'm confused. But yes, that's essentially what you're going to see. You're going to see a lot of that kind of stuff happening. Because, again, guys are going to be like, I can get this guy at 14. Why am I going to pick him at 8? Hey, everybody, 8th pick is up for sale here. I'll take a 3rd if you want to move up into this slot. So there's going to be a lot of talk like that. And I think a lot of stuff that we can see will actually happen days before the actual draft. It may not culminate until the draft itself, but I think we actually see some movement before that. Let me see here. I want to make sure I'm not missing any of these questions. What's the chance the Wing make the playoffs with Stevie Y back? Dave, chances are excellent. Stevie Yzerman built one hell of a team with the Tampa Bay Lightning. He is going to get the Detroit Red Wings back into the mix. Whether that happens this season or not is yet to be seen. Got to give him a little time. But he's going to get that team back to the playoffs for sure. Last bit on Jordan Eberle, too, with Lou Lamoriello here. I mean, it's clear that Lou likes this team. You know, got Brock Nelson signed. By the way, Brock making more than Jordan Eberle now. And that's the other point, too. Jordan Eberle, this is a cap-friendly deal. It is a cap-friendly deal. Lou Lamoriello is a hell of a negotiator. This is a good deal for Lou. $5.5 million for Jordan Eberle at 29 at 5 years. That's phenomenal. Just look at what Buffalo paid for Skinner. Skinner scored 20 more goals than Jordan Eberle this past season. True, but this is a cap-friendly deal. This is a good deal. This is a good deal. I also saw somebody else say that this is a sign that Kiefer Bellows is like 3 years away. I don't know if this has anything to do with Kiefer Bellows, to be honest with you. It may be a sign that he's not ready this year, but he's still young yet. He's still young. Dal Cole, Kiefer Bellows, they're all going to have their time. They're all going to have their time. Jordan Eberle's 29. It's not like he's the oldest guy ever, you know. Which brings us to Erik Karlsson. Erik Karlsson had dinner with San Jose Sharks general manager Doug Wilson the other night. Supposedly, according to the Athletics' Kevin Kurz says that the Sharks are prepared to offer Karlsson an 8-year extension in the range of Drew Doughty's $88 million. Yeesh. That scares the bejesus out of me. Again, why would a player sign a contract in June? What are the reasons? This is tapping into reason one, which is he can't get this deal anywhere else. I don't think that anybody else, well, I know for sure nobody else is going to offer him 8 years because they're not allowed to. But I don't think that anybody else is prepared to give Erik Karlsson an $11 million deal. That is scary to me. Just to kind of illustrate the point at how good Lou is, Eddie's in the chat. What's up, Eddie? Lou is the best. Lou is the best. Because $5.5 million for Jordan Eberle, not a bad. It's fair. Fair for both sides. You didn't rob him blind. It's fair. But as I said on a previous show, from my experience working with the team, general managers will openly say, like, when you're trying to get a guy, you pay whatever. Did the Buffalo Sabres overpay for Skinner? My answer was, yep. What other choice did they have? You just don't have a choice. You're competing against 31 other teams. If you want the guy, and these are his demands, you can't always be like, hey, can you take less? Can you take a haircut? You just can't do it. I'm surprised to hear this from the San Jose Sharks because they have the money to throw around, but that term is killer. And as we've seen in the league the last few years, as the CBA changed and as the league has changed and we're shifting to younger players, 8 years paying this guy, that is an awful lot. That's an awful lot. Now, we know he wants $11 million because that's what him and Doughty were talking about when he was back in Ottawa. He wants to be the highest paid defenseman. Back in Ottawa, you could have made that argument. In San Jose and this year, you can't. 62 points last season, 71 the season before then, 82 the season before then. He had 45 points this season. He only appeared in 53 games. How the injury woes don't scare Doug Wilson is beyond me. I was surprised to see that. I really, really was. And I think it might be a mistake if the San Jose Sharks give him. That's a max contract. Now, I know he can make more money than that, but that's a max contract. That's the highest paid a defenseman is going to be with Doughty, and the most years, that's a max contract by all means. So I think that that's a huge mistake. A huge mistake. Dustin agrees. No way. Erik Karlsson is not worth that money. No way. I don't know if Erik Karlsson is even worth $9 million anymore. Well, that's the point that we were making a couple of days ago on the mornings. Sorry, that's my other radio show. That's the point we were making the other day on the Hockey Talk Show, which is, hey, he might go back to Ottawa because if you're going to wind up taking less because you can't get a big contract, you might as well go play where you love to be. And his wife is from Ottawa, so that's why the Ottawa and Montreal rumors make sense. Because if you're going to go out there and nobody's going to give you that big contract and that term, you might as well go and play where you absolutely want to be. Priscilla, he's a one ankle defenseman. It's true. He is. There's too many injury woes there. I honestly don't see San Jose really doing this. Again, this is just a report from Kevin Kurz in The Athletic, but we know they had dinner because the waiter who waited on them legit tweeted a photo of them together having dinner. Here it is on screen, just so you guys know I'm not making it up for you. There he is right there. There's Erik Karlsson with Doug Wilson and the mysterious waiter having dinner over, what do you order when you're about to offer somebody a ridiculously long contract that they're not worth? What do you order? Tartare? Feels like a tuna tartare kind of night for Doug Wilson. I know he ain't ordering fried chicken. Look at him. The man's in phenomenal shape. I don't know, man. Look, you gave up a lot for Erik Karlsson. It makes sense from that standpoint. But again, age and injury, it just, you are taking a gamble there. You are really, really taking a gamble. All right, let's take some questions. If you guys have any questions, if I missed them, repeat the question, throw it back in the chat. I'm not going to go, I can't go scrolling back up because there's a lot of comments right now. So if you have a question you want to address, anything I've heard, anything I think, let's get into that, and we'll finish up with some rumors here. If he's completely healthy, EK is worth a max contract. Hypothetically, I mean. J Marks, great point. Totally agree. It was not that long ago, my man, that we were talking about, this guy, Doughty and Erik Karlsson won $11 million apiece for 8 years. That makes sense. I mean, that's the whole reason why Ottawa traded him, because he refused to take less. But as we've seen here, he's declined, and he's declined really quickly. Really, really quickly. And as we've seen now with the St. Louis Blues, right, copycat league, sports in general is filled with copycat franchises. As we've seen here now, St. Louis played heavy, right? It's one of the buzzwords. General manager does an interview. How do you guys want to play this year? Well, we want to play fast, but we want to play heavy. St. Louis played heavy. St. Louis illustrated to San Jose, you could knock the crap out of a team and you could totally take away all their offensive weapons. Pavelski, Karlsson, you run down the list of San Jose Sharks injuries. St. Louis demolished that team, and that makes a difference. So if you're wondering, why would a team with Tom Wilson go out and get Radko Gudas? Teams are going to start wanting to play heavy. It's really the only way you can beat the quick, small teams that are out there. J Marks with another great point. 5 stars for you, my friend. It's a shame. At his best, he was one of the most fun players to watch. I remember back to that video where I forget who the Senators were playing, maybe the Kings, but nobody wanted to cover Erik Karlsson in the 3-on-3 overtime. Do you remember that? They were all smiling. Karlsson was all smiles and laughing because nobody wanted to take him in the overtime. He was one of the greats to watch. Maybe he gets back to that form. Maybe Doug Wilson knows a lot more than we know. Actually, Doug Wilson definitely does. I hope so, for the San Jose Sharks' sake. I mean, I really, really do. Quick rumors, and then we're going to get into the hockey jerseys here. It looks like Torrey Krug's future with the Boston Bruins is an offseason priority. Obviously, he is 1 year away from UFA eligibility. He was tremendously important in the Bruins run, but as we've seen in the past, he can be up and down. He was part of trade rumors in the past. Wondering where he sits here. We'll have to see what Butch Cassidy and obviously the general manager, Don Sweeney, and everybody else, Cam Neely, what they think of Torrey Krug. I think Krug signs. Where does he sign, though? He could be an $8 million player. You want to get him on a friendly deal, 6.5. A lot of the Boston Bruins are signed to some pretty friendly deals here, so we'll see what becomes of the Boston Bruins. Rumors are that the Vancouver Canucks and the Edmonton Oilers will have interest in Makita Zaitsev. I think this is just a lot of, this comes from Darren Drager of TSN. I think this is a lot of just Toronto media just blowing some smoke around. I think Zaitsev needs to go to the Arizona Coyotes or the Dallas Stars or the New Jersey Devils. He needs to be in a not crazy covered market, and Nikita Zaitsev will shine. A lot of speculation. He goes to the Islanders, lose the one who gave him the contract there. We'll see what happens. I don't know what those two teams could offer one another because Toronto is so desperate for defense. But maybe, again, a lot of people are going to ask me now, well, what about Nick Leddy? Well, maybe, but the Toronto Maple Leafs need defensemen, like defensive defensemen. So I don't know if Nick Leddy really solves a lot of their problems, but we'll wait and see. I think that it's a crazy idea that Zaitsev is going to go to another Canadian market. That's not the answer he needs. But at the same time, the Toronto Maple Leafs don't really care. He asked for a trade. What do they care how he does afterwards? They're going to try and get the most for themselves in return. Where do you see Sebastian Aho's role next season? Does he make the team out of camp? That's a good question. Too soon to answer it. Again, I like to give answers, but sometimes when there's no answer to give, I'm not going to make up anything. Let's see where the draft falls. Let's see where free agency falls for the Islanders. Like I said, there's going to be trades. Does Leddy get moved? We know that they're going to go youth with, Pulak and Pelech and Taves and these guys and the young kid there coming up from juniors, Noah Dobson. We know there's going to be a lot of that kind of thing. So let's see where. I never was super impressed with Aho. Again, Aho was kind of one of the early ones up into the Islanders system. If I remember correctly, I think he was pre-Pulak. And kind of got passed over by a bunch of guys. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see what happens there. Let's see here. I heard Doug Wilson loves steaks. Yeah, I could see that. Seems like a conversation had over steaks, probably. It probably had to be, I think a seafood tower was involved. I mean, if you're going to be lavish and overpay for something, probably that's a seafood tower, is it not? Seafood tower always seems like a good idea up front. You're like, yeah, I want lobster piled on top of clams, piled on top of oysters, sure. And then you get the bill and you're like, that was $125? That's crazy. That doesn't seem worth it. It kind of absolutely mirrors giving Erik Karlsson an $11 million 8-year deal. That is a seafood tower of a free agency deal right there. All right, I think that's it for the trade rumors. Let's talk about hockey jerseys. Vancouver Canucks fans, how excited are you guys? The Canucks are bringing back some classic looks for their 50th anniversary, and then we're going to talk about Islander jerseys. Yep. Let's talk about Vancouver first. I love their looks. Take a look at the new home jerseys here. Not much of a departure from what they've had. You'll notice the shoulder pads have the hockey stick logo on it. Just a couple of little different tweaks here or there. Home jerseys, the same thing. Blue, a very prominent sort of outline all around here. Stripe on the bottom. Love that. Arm stripes. Got a little one there. I feels like the Orca changed up a little bit. Look at this one. Slightly changing their hockey stick jersey. Got the big C here in this outline. A lot of people didn't really realize that. Stick comes in, breaks up the outline there, makes a C for Canucks. Really, really like that. Notice little details here. There's these little specks and dots in the numbers. I love things like that. Always a big fan of that stuff. And, of course, as you can see here, they're bringing back the black skate jersey for, I believe, a limited time. It's really going to be just for the 50th anniversary season. But as we've seen with jerseys in the past, they introduce something as a one-time deal, and then it kind of winds up sticking. So we'll have to wait and see what happens there. But I'm excited for the Vancouver Canucks jerseys. Those look pretty sweet. Any jersey news we're going to be covering here in the offseason on the Hockey Talk Show, so stay tuned for that. Which leads me to my next point, Islander fans. This poll popped up for the New York Islanders today, where they asked which one of these old school alternate jerseys were your favorite. Fisherman jerseys involved, the Black Diamond jersey was involved, the Orange Star jersey was involved, and the old school Islander logo, new school Fisherman Wave was involved. I think we can see any one of these jerseys come back. I think the Islanders are inching ever so closely to bringing back the Fisherman logo as an alternate, and I could not be more excited. I think there is a groundswell for this jersey to return. I don't think that people are as embarrassed by this jersey as the older school Islander fans want everybody to think they are. Now that this team is a winning team, I think bringing back a jersey like this is the nice sort of 90s nostalgia that this franchise needs right now. Kids that went to the Islander game for the first time and the Islanders are wearing this jersey are now in their 30s and 40s, and they're taking their kids to games, and they want some of those old school vibes to return. I'm telling you, there isn't a swell about for these logos. The Islanders, by the way, have been introducing all sorts of not memorabilia, all sorts of merchandise with the Fisherman logo. This year, they were selling a hat that had just the Fisherman's head on it. One of the more popular old school throwback hats is the logo with the Fisherman on it. They were selling these jerseys at the Nassau Coliseum this year in their team stores. They did wear these in warm-ups a couple of years ago. They've been sort of just edging around this. I think we're going to see it. A lot of changes in jerseys this season for next season. I think we could really see a strong comeback for the Fish Sticks jersey. I would love to see that. I would like to see it without the wave. I'd like to see the Fish Stick logo sans some of the teal maybe, and just put it on the jersey that they have now. I think that would look really cool. I don't think the Black Diamond jersey is good. I think that's the worst Islander jersey ever. That's the worst jersey to me. It was so plain and boring. But I love the Fisherman. So does John. So does Deirdre. Telling you, there's a love for the Fisherman. There really, really is. Again, it doesn't go along with the narrative, but it's true. We will leave it there. I'm not sure when we'll speak again, but it will definitely be soon because we have reached the exciting part of the offseason. You know, the Stanley Cup Finals are exciting, but really it's for massive fans and the two fan bases that are playing. When we get past the Stanley Cup Finals, now everybody's back involved again. Is my team going to draft this guy? Is my team going to trade for so-and-so? Are we going to extend this one? Are we going to land this free agent? So we're back open to all 32 fan bases, and I could not be more excited. We will do a draft show. We will be around for free agency for sure. And, of course, we're going to see a lot of trades like we saw today. 2 trades. Niskanen for Gudis, a pretty significant trade. And there was another trade, too. It was Connor Ingram from the Tampa Bay Lightning in exchange for the Nashville Predators' 7th-round pick. Not an exciting trade there. But at least there were 2 trades today, which is kind of cool. Appreciate the comments. Real. Thanks so much. Deirdre, John, Dustin, everybody in the Facebook and YouTube chats. Don't forget to check out the podcast version of this show. We upload the podcast version about an hour or so it takes to get up after every live show here on Facebook and YouTube. So make sure you guys are checking it out. That is our main source of income. So play the podcast. Even if you don't want to listen to it, put it in the background, lower the volume. I don't care. Just hit that play button. You can get to our podcast from hockeytalkshow.com. Take a look. We are on all the major networks. And make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts or Stitcher or TuneIn or Spotify. Just hit the subscribe button. Check out the podcast. It's a great option in case you missed any part of the show right here. Next time there's some major breaking news, we will be here with you talking about it on the Hockey Talk Show. Have a great night, everybody. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there.